If you're wondering how you can operate a full functioning cabinet shop, woodworking business out of your garage, check out this video because I think it's going to help you understand the process that I take whenever I do my projects. And in order to do this, you really need to be efficient. You got to set up your shop efficiently. That is why I'm doing this video, just to kind of show you how I build the jobs from start to finish, all that stuff. It's, a lot of thought goes into it. It's not something that I just came up with, overnight. And certainly in 20 years of doing work, cabinet work, custom cabinet work out of my garage, it's certainly been a lot of time that I've been able to develop a good plan. And I think it's something that, I've gotten to the point in my career where I can share this with people. I don't, I'm not fearing competition. It used to be back in the day where you wouldn't share this kind of information because you were thinking either one, people are going to take that information and utilize it, to compete against you, or two, you just weren't confident enough to, give people this kind of instruction. But when you open up your shop to show people how you work and how you actually do the jobs from start to finish, I think people understand, this can be done in a garage, certainly. There are some things you need to think about, though. It is not the same thing as having a commercial space. You're not going to be able to use some of the same equipment that you might be able to use in a commercial space. You may not have a room for some really big items like some CNC machines, panel saws, depending on the space of your garage, some bigger than others, obviously. I started out in a smaller 2-car garage, but it was like a 2-car garage, but then it had like a half of a garage. And that actually was a really good shop to begin my woodworking business. And then I moved into another home that had a 3-car garage that was just very similar to this one. And I've been here for over 10 years in this particular one. So when I seeked out another home to buy, I looked for the particular type of setup I looked for was a tandem garage, 2 wide with a tandem 3rd car. And specifically one that had really high ceilings. The highest ceiling homes we could find, these are 10.5-foot ceilings. So the previous house I was at had a 9-foot ceilings, and I thought those were great, and they were, because the home before that I had, barely over 8 feet. And when you're dealing with big, materials, it's hard. Think about that. When you're working on big jobs, and you're in a confined space, your ceiling height is really going to limit you. It's not just building the jobs, but it's just maneuvering pieces, lumber, plywood, sheet goods. How you store it is going to be important. Do you store it vertically? Do you store it horizontally? Do you store it on edge? All this stuff I'm going to try to go over in this video, and I'm going to show you from my standpoint how I start from ripping my sheet goods down to all my joinery, and kind of the process from one step to the next. And you'll see everything has a spot in the process. And in order to do that the most efficiently, I found that you need to have your components to your workshop in a particular spot. All this stuff's going to be done systematically so that it's done efficiently. And check out this video, and I'm going to walk you through, kind of do a tour of the shop, but I'm also going to be showing you how I do this. This section here is my sheet goods section. So this is my 4x8 section. This is the material that I'm working on pretty much all the time, and it's usually the next project. So you see that there's maple plywood here, pre-finished maple plywood. So this particular project is going to be a custom bathroom vanity for a customer. And again, everything I produce here is for custom cabinets that are for clients. They're not for show. This is a real job. So what I do is I actually have these situated in such a way that I can flip this over, bring it over here, and then lift it right onto the table saw. Above it, of course, you have saw blade storage. This is really important to have something to put all your saw blades in. And even if you don't use a lot of different saw blades, after a while, you're going to start building up a collection. And I recommend building some sort of a rack for them. This particular rack, I built it quite a while ago and it works great. However, I am running out of room. So I'm going to be building a new rack and it's going to be slightly different than this. But overall, this is a great way to store your blades. So then I put my blades over here that need to be sharpened. So here's a, chop master that needs to be sharpened. In fact, I wrote down dole on this thing. I've got my crosscut sleds and I've got my, edge banding, however, but I've got my fences there for my sacrificial fence with hold downs. I've got my inserts. Okay, so once I'm over here, I flip the pieces onto the table saw and I run them through. Now that's the best way for me to do it in my shop. And if you find that you have to straight line rip something, then break out the track saw and just put it on here and, break it down that way. But that's not the way I do it. And, frankly, it works out great for me to do it the way that I do it. But in some cases, maybe you have wonky wood that's not really straight, then you definitely have to straight line rip it. I don't have a sliding table saw, so the best bet for me at that point would be to break out the track saw. Okay, so underneath my cabinet saw, you'll notice I've got a couple of things. One is a trash can that fits perfectly in there, and the other is an outfeed support. I should say it's a side feed support. Of course, the overhead guard, I wouldn't do my work without it. So that's one of those things. You saw my video. If not, take a look at that. Now, if you've seen my video on my table saw blades, my main go-to blade for pretty much all my work is going to be my Freud thin kerf. I like the thin kerf glue line rip. Another part of this ensemble is this guy right here. This is a splitter. And these splitters for me are vital because my saw does not have a riving knife. Now, as I'm ripping, the question is, what do you do with your stuff when you're ripping, right? Storing your parts is very important because you can only get so much stuff, right, in a shop. You can't fit everything. So when you do stuff, you need to be doing it smartly. After I'm done ripping, I'll end up with, let's say 24-inch wide or 20-inch wide pieces. I have a garage door rail right there. Now, that's a pretty good way to keep stuff vertical and out of the way. However, you want to be careful when you do this. You want to make sure that you've got good support and not too much of an angle. So keep the pieces quite straight up, but not too straight that they want to fall back. But this is the strongest point. So I can push here and there's just no deflection, right? So that's the point where you want to make sure that you're putting your stuff. If you put stuff in the middle, you'll get a little more movement in the rail, but it's still pretty strong. You just need to be careful. The other option would be to put them up against the back here. You just have to be careful because where you put stuff here, this is one thing that you'll find it can really affect workpieces is if you have an uninsulated garage door and it's summertime and the sun beats down on it, you'll actually notice your workpieces will start to warp. So I insulated the garage door and it took away all that warping. There's no heat at the door. This is really a great thing to do. And it was so cheap. Now, however, the windows are a different story. So when you have windows in your garage and you're using it as a shop, it's great for light. I don't like working without those showing light. If you put a piece of maple plywood up there, you'll actually get a mark of a shading from the sun, and it will just be in that one section where that light is, not the bottom. So you'll end up with like a stripe on your piece. So no matter what wood you have, most likely you're going to get some sort of a staining effect. So in order to combat that, I've actually made cardboard covers. I have two that go over the entire length here, and that's really nice. Also, a note about the insulation is that it really insulates your garage from sound also. So it deadens the sound, so outside the sounds aren't so loud. That's really nice as well, especially if you're in an area where you've got neighbors, which I am. Now, after I'm done ripping, I've got to cross-cut all my pieces. I drop the cross-cut sled here, and I start immediately cross-cutting. And once all my cross-cuts are done, I've got to start all my joinery, which generally speaking starts with dados and rabbets. So I break out the dado set and I start doing all my joinery. So when you see my videos, there's a process that I go through almost entirely. Every single job has the exact same construction because it's all built the same way. And then once that's cut, I can start assembly once the joinery is done there. So after all the joinery is done, after I've started building the cabinet, the next thing is you have to have a place to put your cabinets as you're building them. You can't build cabinets and put them on an uneven floor without expecting your cabinet to kind of twist as it's drying. And it's not good to do that. So what I've done is I've built these platforms. So these are flat and they're level, and they're actually leveled with each other. So I can continue one way or the other. And this is 10 foot long and that's 8 foot long. These guys are torsion boxes and they are really awesome. They actually swing up out of the way. If you want to put them on the wall like I have them, I actually can swing them and hook them. You can see where I can hook the guy right here on both sides, and that will allow to get it up off the floor if you want to, you know, bring something big in here. This one as well does the same thing. It folds up. However, I don't fold them up very often because I'm using them so frequently. But the idea is that they are essentially they're mobile. You could take them, you can move them around, you know, position them however you want. But they've got leveling feet, so they're solid all the way across because the floor is anything but flat and straight. So you can't utilize the floor to effectively store your cabinets as you're building them. And this is extremely important. If you're building a big cabinet, let's say a kitchen or a huge wall unit, and you don't have any place to actually properly put your job as you're building it, I will show you videos where I build my cabinets and you'll see that I'm literally building the entire thing and it starts to build up on these platforms and it keeps everything completely level, which is how it's going to be when you get to the job, right? You're going to level the cabinet. The first thing you do, level the cabinet. So now you've got the same positioning that you did here, and then you can build up from it. So I take my job from here to the job site, and it goes just as it was here, it's going in the job site. So if it's a face frame and you've got joinery, you've got connecting pieces, everything's going to end up being the same. Once you're done building your cabinets and they're drying, now it's time to start working on the next stage, which is the face frames. Now, I know this is the way I build them. Some people do it in reverse order. They build the face frames and then they build their cabinets. I put all my face frame material all up there on these racks. So my go-to material for paint grade is poplar. Poplar is less expensive than maple. It's a little softer than maple, so it's a little easier to work with. Once you get to the point where you've got your face frames figured, you need to start cutting those, right? You need to process that stuff. And again, all this is happening while your cabinets are gluing up. You've measured them, so you know what you need to do for your face frames. So I'm going to figure out all my cuts, and then I will cut them rough size, and then, you know, work with shorter pieces. So from there, I will go right to my miter saw, and I will start rough cutting them on my marks. If all these guys needed to be jointed, I would take these and take it right over to the jointer, which every piece is going to need to be jointed, right? And start working on the joiner, getting all my parts really nice and smooth and straight. And no tear outs, no nothing. So that edge is going to be very perfect, ready to go. And then from there, I start sizing everything up with my table saw. Again, utilizing, generally speaking, my 30-tooth glue line rip. Check out my video on how to rip boards without them warping, because it's really critical to understand how to do that. And it's really simple, it just takes a little bit more work, but you end up with lots of usable material instead of getting those pieces that just curve on you as you cut them. So after you size everything, I always end up with a big bunch of pieces, right? All my parts are right here. So I start with my biggest pieces and then I go down from there. I'm very careful when I take them off the saw to leave them with the sawn edge to the left, okay? What that's gonna do is that every single piece with the sawn edge to the left, when I take this to the next step, which is the miter saw, to cut them to length, I know that all those pieces are gonna be situated so that the sawn edge goes up against the miter saw fence. This is really important because you're gonna get tear out on your fence as you cut it. This is my sawn edge right here, right? This is my jointed edge. I don't want tear out on this side. So what I do, position it just like that. It's the little details like this that set yourself apart from others. This is it right here. Cut it, so now you have tear out there, but that's okay because this edge, either it's going to be behind a wall or it's going to be behind molding, whatever. If this edge is not going to be shown, we don't care about that edge. If it's going to be shown, like let's say it's a middle divider and you need both edges to be perfectly clean, this is the edge that I'm going to joint after I cut this to length. And then once you put them in the cabinet, both edges are jointed and there's no tear out. Now you have a nice, perfectly clean workpiece. That there's a system in place. One is the processing. It's not like I'm going back to the back of the shop. This is all centrally located. Now, if you have things on the other side of the room and you're constantly having to go back and forth, it doesn't make a lot of sense efficiently. The next place for me is to go here. This is my pocket joiner. So it's here right at my workbench. These things are messy tools, right? If you do pocket holes, you know what I'm talking about. This is set up on dust collection. It's on this, the Fest tool right there. It's on automatic. So as soon as I pull the trigger, it sucks the dust. And I'll tell you what, I mean, when I'm done doing pockets, I'm left with not much there. Not every part's going to get pocketed, right? So you need to be able to tell yourself which parts get pocketed. On the miter saw bench, after I'm done cutting them to length, I mark them for pockets, doing it. So I stack all my parts, again, just the way they are. They're grouped and I'm stacking them so I can see all my pockets. I know which ones I need to pocket and that's it. Take it right over in groups, in light groups. I try to keep everything together. And then once I pocket them, I put them back just the way they were so that I'm not rotating. You know, I keep everything consistent. You know, my inside edges are all facing the same direction. Just makes your job go so much better when you don't have to constantly be rotating work pieces and trying to figure out what's what. All that's done. Now you have to start building the face frame. When you have face frames that you're going to build, I can put them together in so many different directions. So I've got track here, all the way around, and all the way down at that end. So if I want to clamp something down all the way around, just recently I built a couple jobs that were 9 feet long. Those, you know, I clamped on both sides of the workbench and I was able to get everything done without having to rotate, you know, a bunch of times. So if you do something like this, give yourself that flexibility of being able to have the track. Doing face frame joinery and without a big clamping table, you know, you can get those really nice ones, but shop space is critical. I don't have room for a big face frame clamping table that only does face frame clamping. This does so much more. And so that's one thing to think about it. Like there's other things out there that you can utilize to build cabinet face frames, but they only do that, right? They don't double as anything else or triple or quadruple. makes it so much more efficient. So I'll go ahead, I'll clamp these up, I'll assemble them. I check them on the cabinet to make sure that they're good. After that, I put them aside to dry. Before I put them on the cabinet, glue them on, what I want to do is I want to sand them. Because if you sand them before you put them on, it's so much easier to maneuver a piece, a face frame versus a humongous cabinet. This to me is one of those time savers that I think really is important to try. Face frames that are sanded and then get put on, your cabinets go so much quicker. Now, after you put them on, if you use clamps, if you use nails, whatever the method that you want to use, I just recommend that you put glue on the face frames when you glue them up, but also on the cabinet when you glue the face frame to the cabinet. And if you can, clamp it up. Clamping gives you a much better joint. There are some times when I can't clamp, so I utilize nails to assemble face frames on the cabinet, but it's okay. If they're stain grade, I try not to. I really try not to. I mean, pretty much I don't use nails if I'm doing a stain grade job. But if it's paint grade, it's okay because the painters are going to do a great job of filling those holes. It's just the same as when I put molding on the cabinet. You're going to get nails on them, so I don't lose sleep over some nails putting on my cabinets. So this is the next thing. When you're clamping up your face frames onto the cabinet, there's things you have to think about. One is you need clamps. So if you notice, this is the greatest spot to put clamps in my opinion. I don't have to worry about some cart rolling around. These things are right there. They're at the ready. So there's 12 on each side. These are 24-inch, which is the standard size for cabinet clamps. The other thing you're going to have to think about is in order to clamp this down, you have to have a way to raise your cabinets up. So this is what I have in order to make my clamping so much better. When I clamp up my cabinets, I put these down underneath the cabinets, and now the cabinets will sit on top of two of these. Now my clamps will have a space here to go underneath. This is really nice. Once this is done and these guys are clamped up, let's say there's 15 clamps on it. Well, you can actually leave this thing sitting here, or if you need to clamp up another cabinet, what I do is I just slide this, boom, over there. You can use these guys here, the risers, and just slide it right over on this workbench, and you can store the cabinet over there while it's drying. Okay, so now all this stuff is done. You've got your cabinets built. The face frames are glued on. Now, if your cabinet has doors, your face frames are done. You know how big your doors need to be. So you've already calculated your door sizes. If you haven't, now's the time to do it. It's the perfect time while the face frames glue up on the cabinet to do lots of stuff. One of them is to start ripping your parts for your doors. Now, when I was building or when I was ripping all my parts previously, the very beginning, oftentimes I will rip my parts for other things as well. One of which is my parts for doors, depending on what I'm making the doors out of. And every job is going to be a little different. So the material that you use is going to be a little different. But if it's a material that I'm going to use a sheet good material for the doors, I will rip all those pretty much right away and get those done. Okay, so now you've taken all your parts, you've made your door parts. Now you need to cut those door parts to length. And again, you're going to go to the miter saw to do that, right? So now we're going to take all those parts. I'm going to stack them right here. This is where this nice side support works great. I can put 8-foot long boards if they're 8-foot MDF boards for my doors, or if they're poplar or whatever I'm using to build the doors. I'm going to stack them right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and start working on those. Process them here, and then use my stops in order to get all those parts sized correctly. Now, once that's all done, you're going to have a whole bunch of parts for your doors. I label all my parts. If they're doors, I label all the rails and all the stiles. So I'll put an S at the top, or I'll put an R for rail. The rails, I also put a line on the end so I know that gets coped. So the coping is the first step after you size these pieces. You're going to go to the router table and start coping. Now again, everything is in a process that is easy to go from one to the next. If I start here, cut all my parts, I go way back here and I can actually store all my parts back over here because this is a big space. So I'm going to take all my rails, normally they're small, and I put them here. I can get tons of rails right there. They're all grouped together. Those go first. My stiles I'll put back here. And if they're really long stiles, like 60 inches or so, obviously those are going to need to go in a little bit different space because I need room for those. Depending on the size, you can deal with this, but they're in order. So all my rails here, they go first. I will set up my router for, this is actually set up for my beading I just did, but so my router table's here. I'm going to go ahead, set up. I've got all my, these are my door making sets. Some of them, I will put them here. So I've got my shaker with the bevel, which seems to be the most popular door right now. So I'll grab this guy and I will bring it down here and start working on my copes, and then I will work on the sticks. All that stuff is going to be done here. Once that's all done, and you guys watch my video on how to make doors because I've got so many of them. This is just a really great thing to know how to do. And this is why my channel is here, to show people from start to finish every aspect of building custom cabinets for people or for yourself. After I'm done working on all the parts, I've got everything routed. Now I can take all my parts, and as I process my parts over there, I bring them over here because this is where I'm going to stack everything that needs to be put together. I'll keep everything here in a neat order, and then I will bring them over here. And I'll put them all here. I'll get my bucket for my water, and I'll get my glue. I'll get everything that I need for building doors. Everything will be all right here. And now, again, go back to that same thing. What do you need most when you're building cabinets other than wood? You need clamps. You need clamps, you need glue. Clamps are right here. Everything is going to be good. So I can glue up 12 doors with these 24 clamps. And when I need more, what I do is I just grab the ones over here if I need some, or I'll wait until the other ones are dry. It doesn't take that long, maybe an hour. I can take them out of the clamps and then I can start building more doors. So if I have, let's say, 20 doors to make, it's not going to be a problem. Now, once all these doors are built, again, you have to have a spot to put them. Now, where's the best spot to put a door when it's done being built? It's going to be on a flat surface that's non-twisted, that's straight. That is going to be either my workbench. Your table saw top actually has a really nice flat surface that's not twisted. Or, of course, my go-to, which would be my platforms. The workbench as well over here is great, but don't put them on the concrete floor because it's not flat and it's not smooth and it's not straight. You're going to end up with racked or twisted doors possibly. So do yourself a favor. If you have a shop that doesn't have the greatest flat surfaces, then build one. Build a torsion box because that's going to give you a really nice flat surface. Okay, so now I've got doors stacked up wherever they're going to be, and they're off to the side. So while those dry, now I'm going to start working on the face frames because the face frames are now going to be all done and ready to be, let's say they need to be flush trimmed from the cabinets that they were just glued up to, or you'll take clamps off of them if there's clamps on them, but you'll start working on that part of it. And now there's going to be a couple of things that you could be doing at this point. If you have drawers to build, if you've got shelves to make, all that stuff. The shelves, I like to process that when I'm doing my sheet goods as well. So if I'm doing shelves, I'll rip for those. But sometimes I won't cross cut for those until the cabinets are done. So I know exactly how big to make the shelves. Then I will start making the shelves at this point. So if the shelves come at this point, do those. Those are going to be done. And then once those are done, you can sand those. Now, after you're done sanding the shelves, those doors have to be sanded on the top and bottom, right? So now's a good time to go ahead and sand those, because you just sanded your shelves. You might as well go ahead and start sanding your doors after they've dried. So all this stuff is being done very quickly and efficiently. Once your doors are done being sanded, now you have to put them on the cabinet. The next step with them is to put the hinges on them. So look what's here, the drill press. I don't have to go very far for this stuff because it's right here. So all my doors, boom, they're right here. Put them here, drill out for the hinges. Now, once these are drilled, set them down here, because guess what? I'm going to be putting the hinges on next. So those are all going to be screwed to the doors right now. Get them out of the way. And now when you're done with those, you can go ahead and put them on the cabinet. Now remember that once you put the doors on the cabinet, it's really difficult to do anything to the cabinet at that point. As far as sanding, maybe you want to fine tune your face frame, because if you clamped them, maybe you left a mark or two. So you want to fine tune your face frames. Just make sure they're perfect before you go putting doors on. Once you get the hinges dialed in, right, you've adjusted for the level and everything, that's when you want to mark everything so that you don't lose those doors once you take them off in order to move the cabinet to the job site. You want to make sure that the painters know what's what. And this is something that is really important, because all that you just did to set up your hinges and level out the cabinets, that takes quite a bit of time. So you don't want to mess that up by not labeling which doors what. If you have shelves, you're going to want holes in your cabinet. So if you are building a small cabinet where there's only a few shelves, you can definitely use a handheld jig. I would, but if it's in a material like a plywood, I don't care how many holes there are. I don't find that those handheld jigs give you a really good cut. So I like to use my line boring machine if I want a really nice circle and there's no tear out. So I'm going to use my line boring machine before I put the cabinets together, right? This is a really important part. There's so many parts to building custom cabinetry that I'm just trying to get you to understand the process that I utilize in order to build stuff. I'm here to answer your questions, and I've put together my channel. It's been, about a year or so, not quite a year since I started posting videos, and maybe about 8 months or so. But in that 8 months, I've had lots of conversations with people, and one of the things that I've heard most of is people want to know the logistics of doing this type of work. Like, how do you do it? What's your day-to-day? What are the business aspects of it? There's so many parts of doing this that, I just kind of wanted to follow up my first video on keys to success, like what you should be thinking about as far as starting a business. That was my first video. Now, this is kind of the second video, as, it's kind of a shop tour, but it's also a flow, kind of a job flow tour and a discussion about what I do. I hope that it's helped somebody out there. Hopefully it's helped more than somebody, but please comment and let me know if there's anything that you would like to know about my shop or my procedures. That would be awesome. I love interaction with people. I love positive feedback. And honestly, if you're gonna, write me, I get a lot of people on my website asking me questions or, commenting. Do it, do it right on the channel. That's cool too. Either way, I think it's great that people interact, and I appreciate it. So let me know if there's any questions you have. I'd be happy to answer them. And I'm sure that there's going to be some. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.